At the most general level, all work can be characterized by a number of process steps. Each person in the process does a component part of the overall work to deliver an end product or service that creates value for the customer. And so long as the capacity to do work exceeds the demand placed on the system doing the work, there is an equilibrium. So even in this so-called steady state where we have a balance between supply and demand, if we look a little bit deeper, we will find that there is always a constraint. And looking at the system from the outside, the constraint is always in one of three places: in supply to our system, in our ability to make what the market calls for from us, or in the marketplace itself. In other words, we have more capacity than the market is willing to buy. And usually in this steady state is a situation that's ripe for disruption. A competitor comes along. A customer falls away. Some different product substitutes for your product. In these kinds of environments, things then change. The traditional model of managing complexity looks to do so by breaking things up into their different pieces. So we're trying to optimize the parts in the hope that that will produce the best possible result for the system. We'll look at each part in isolation and invoke them to go harder, to go stronger, to go faster. Everybody does appear to be very busy without any sense of what is that critical thing that really is going to make the difference. Because what's happening is that at the bottleneck, the work is building up.
There's a tendency to say, well, everything's priority, everything's got to be done.
An inevitable effect of any bottleneck is a build-up of work in process. And everybody works harder and the work builds up even more, because we cannot produce more than the bottleneck is capable of actually producing. As work in process builds up, it slows overall flow, eats more capital, and takes you further from your goal. No matter how hard everybody works, the thing that's going to determine how much work actually gets done in terms of value delivered to a customer is going to be governed by the constraint. In the same way that the visionaries of old challenged our worldviews, using sound reason, the assumptions that underpinned the Industrial Revolution become less and less useful in the age of knowledge. In our far more complex and interconnected world, taking the historical reductionist approach to the management of work can be superseded by a systems thinking view that understands the whole and therefore focuses on those few things that determine the rate at which value is created. On the assumption that your enterprise has a clearly defined goal. What the theory of constraints says is that any system has got very few things, quite often only one thing, that governs the rate at which value is created. And the first order of business is to identify the constraint. Once we have identified the bottleneck, it's critical to get as much out of it as we possibly can. An inevitable consequence of having a constraint is that non-constraints have capacity available. The work of non-constraints is to synchronize and subordinate their work to the work of the constraint. The constraint must do only that which only the constraint can do. So by serving the needs of the system as a whole, rather than optimizing the performance of each silo in isolation, those units thus gained at the constraint are units gained for the whole system. By contrast, any improvement in work rate made at a non-constraint delivers nothing and destroys value.
In order to make any change in a system, one has to have a profound understanding of that system. Once we have an understanding of what that is, we then need to ask some new questions, challenge existing assumptions. By doing that, we actually invoke a different flow of innovation.
We see the world in a different way, so we will show you possibilities that you've never even dreamed of. And through our productivity solutions, we're able to give you 25% or more with the same resource base that you have, based on the principle that that bottleneck, if managed properly, is a place of high leverage.
The value add really at the end of the day is increased profits of less capital requirements, happier staff. We have a business with no debt, fantastic levels of stock and stock turn, a clear vision amongst our staff about what's important and what they need to work on every single day.